She clinked her glass against the mic like she was auditioning for attention. The ballroom went silent, just the way she liked it. Slouched posture, that champagne tilt, the kind of smile that always curled too high on the left when she was tipsy enough to be bold, but not drunk enough to be excused. Then came her line. "We're in an open relationship now, right, honey?" It didn't even register right away. Laughter broke out. People clapped. A few did that awkward rich person chuckle like they didn't know if they should laugh or not. One guy actually gave me a thumbs up from 2 tables over. Someone yelled, "Get it, man!" And another woman raised her glass to my wife like she was Joan of Arc in heels. I didn't laugh. I didn't flinch. I just raised my glass, slow and steady, like I was saluting a funeral. I looked at her, really looked, and it was the first time in years I realized how much I didn't know this woman, or maybe how much I pretended not to know. Her glittering dress, the one she swore she borrowed from a stylist friend, had the tags ripped off in our bedroom trash earlier that week. The ring she wore, pawned my dad's old Rolex to pay for that after she said our anniversary wasn't the time for gifts. They called her magnetic. I used to call her my wife. 2 hours later, while she held court at the bar, tossing around flirtatious smiles like party favors, her best friend, let's call her Paige, sat down next to me. Low-cut dress, lipstick a shade darker than usual, and a look that said she wasn't here to play therapist. She didn't waste time. "If she's serious," Paige whispered, swirling her drink. I called dibs. I turned and looked at her, really looked, and for the first time that evening I smiled, not at the joke, not at the absurdity of it all. I smiled at the confirmation, at the beginning, because Paige didn't realize it, but she wasn't throwing a flirtation grenade into a happy marriage. She was dancing on the ashes. And here's the part she, and my wife, didn't see coming. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to storm out and demand apologies in front of a room full of charity board members and hedge fund clowns. I was going to leave, quietly, completely, but not before making sure she understood what open really meant. Not just legs, not just relationships. Open meant exposure. Open meant doors, and I was already halfway through one. The rest of the night passed like a slow-motion car wreck. She gave a drunken air-kiss speech about reinventing love in modern times. Someone mistook us for relationship pioneers. She posed for photos I'd never see, and I watched. Just watched, like someone watching termites on a wooden beam, knowing the collapse is inevitable, just a matter of which floor caves in first. I should probably mention, over 97% of people listening to stories like this never hit subscribe, which is wild, considering these stories take days of planning, writing, and voice work from a whole team. So if you're here, still listening, do us a favor. Hit that button, it keeps us going, and make sure stories like this keep finding the people who need to hear them. Anyway, back to the collapse. After the gala, she disappeared into the hotel bar with a group of industry creatives, a euphemism she'd used before for people who contributed nothing except opinions and tabs. I slipped out unnoticed, elevator to garage, valet ticket already punched. I didn't leave a note, didn't text, didn't even leave her the key card to our suite. The car ride back wasn't angry. It was surgical. I wasn't planning a reaction. I was initiating an exit strategy, because when someone announces your breakup on a microphone with champagne breath and a punchline, they don't get the courtesy of a second conversation. They get silence, and then consequences. The door clicked shut behind me like punctuation, sharp, final, and deeply satisfying. I didn't slam it. I didn't stomp out. I walked out of that gala like a man who just signed the final page of a decades-long lease, knowing the building was about to collapse, and it was someone else's problem now. The house was dark when I got in. No lights, no music, no scent of the overpriced candles she always left burning because ambiance mattered. Just silence, the kind that makes you aware of your own breathing. I walked straight into our bedroom, pulled out the suitcase she bought me last Christmas, leather, monogrammed, a subtle way of saying I wasn't stylish enough on my own, and started packing. Not frantically, not in a rage, just methodically. Socks, shirts, that one sweater she hated because it made me look older. I packed it first. By the time I'd zipped up the last bag, I could hear her heels clicking in from the garage, each step soaked in whatever overpriced perfume she bathed in before a social high. She didn't call out for me. That was telling. Instead, I heard the clatter of her phone tossed onto the kitchen island, the fridge opening, and a lazy laugh, probably still high on attention. When she finally walked into the bedroom, dress wrinkled, lipstick smudged at the corners, She paused in the doorway like she'd walked into the wrong scene. "You're kidding," she said, her tone one part disbelief, two parts amusement. I didn't look up, folded one last shirt and pressed the suitcase closed. "Oh my God, you're being so dramatic," she scoffed, arms crossed. "It was a joke. People laughed. Grow up." I zipped the bag slowly, then turned to her, calm, still. "I'm not angry," I said, voice level. "Just done." It didn't register. She blinked, waiting for the follow-up. A tantrum, a begging plea, something she could control or spin, but I just walked past her, picked up the small black box from the nightstand and popped it open, slid the ring off my finger and placed it inside. No note, no dramatic slam, just precision. "You're being ridiculous," she called after me. "You're going to throw away our life over a comment?" I stopped at the bedroom door, glanced at her, not with rage, not even with sadness. "I didn't throw it away," I said. "You auctioned it off. I just didn't bid." I slept in the guest room, not to make a statement, just because I didn't want her perfume clinging to my pillow. At 5:42 a.m., I quietly walked out the front door with 2 bags, my laptop, and the keys to a place she didn't know existed yet. By the time she woke up, the closet was empty, the ring sat like a paperweight of regret on the counter, and the bathroom shelf she always dominated with serums and scented nonsense had one small gap where my razor used to be. No fight, no closure, just absence, which, if you ask me, cuts deeper than any shouted goodbye. She started small, a text, just a question mark. Then, "Really?" Then, "Call me." All left unread. By noon, her tone had shifted. "You're being immature. We need to talk. You're blowing this out of proportion." Nothing bounced back. No delivered receipts, no 3 dots, no him. She tried calling, straight to voicemail. Her annoyance built like a slow fever. She stormed into her kitchen, opened the laptop and logged into the shared bank account, or tried to. The login worked. The balance, 0. The secondary savings, gone. Every account name that used to start with both our initials now ended in a flat system message, closed by primary account holder, time-stamped, dated, 2 days before the gala. She froze, blinked, tried again, thinking maybe she fat-fingered something. Nope. She went for the shared credit cards. Mine, deactivated, hers, still active, but only the one she'd opened under her name, the one I used to pay off every month like clockwork. That clock had stopped ticking. She grabbed her phone, scrolled to the provider's app, and realized her own number had been removed from the family plan. Reassigned, paid through the end of the month. Her name was still on the condo's title though, right? Nope. She pulled up the property record site, the one she used once to stalk some influencer's house after a wine night, and typed in our address. What she found wasn't even subtle. Owner, TSL Irrevocable Trust. She stared at it, clicked around, searched for more details. TSL? She knew those were his initials. But Irrevocable Trust? When the hell had that happened? Her emails were next. She typed his name into the search bar like she expected it to summon him back into existence. But what surfaced instead was a folder she hadn't noticed before, titled Rental Exit, Unshared, created a month ago. She clicked. Inside were lease agreements. A high-rise 1-bedroom downtown, furnished, paid 6 months up front, documents signed, keys collected, 2 weeks ago, while she was getting a facial and arguing on Twitter about whether monogamy was a cultural prison. There were other files too, password changes, insurance policy transfers, even a spreadsheet titled Severance Plan. Not joking. He'd listed categories: financial independence, legal isolation, asset relocation, emotional distance, finalized. She slammed the laptop shut so hard the wine glass beside it toppled. And that's when the dread kicked in. It didn't roar, it didn't scream, it crept. Because it wasn't just that he'd left, it's that he'd been preparing to leave. While she was rehearsing punchlines and clinking glasses, he was shifting assets and building walls she couldn't scale. She thought he'd be circling the block, waiting for a text. Instead, he was already 10 moves into a different game. And the part that really made her stomach twist? She didn't know what came next, because if this was step 1, paper trails, trusts, silent disappearances, then step 2 wouldn't be yelling or begging or showing up drunk with roses. Step 2 would be worse. Step 2 would be silence, followed by systems, and systems don't care if you're sorry. She stormed into Paige's loft the way she always did, heels clicking too loud on the hardwood, voice already raised before the door even closed. "Can you believe this? He's actually ghosting me, like some teenager." Paige barely looked up from her wine glass. She was curled into her couch like someone auditioning for indifference, legs tucked, sweater loose, the kind of look you throw together when you want to seem accidentally beautiful. "You didn't tell me you were stopping by," Paige said, slow sip. "I could have cleaned up. You're my best friend. I don't need an invite." Just that. No hug, no wine offer, no usual dramatics about exes or lipsticks or god-awful influencers faking pregnancies for engagement. Something was off, but she didn't notice. Not yet. She paced instead, ranted, described how he vanished like a magician, how she checked the joint accounts and everything was gone, how there was a trust, like he'd been planning this for months, like she was some idiot who never saw the rope tightening until it yanked. "I mean," she said, exasperated, "isn't he being a little dramatic? It was a joke. People laughed." Paige shrugged. "Did you laugh?" The question came out too smooth, too rehearsed. "What?" "You said people laughed. I'm asking if you did." There was a pause. "No, I was just playing along. You know how events are." "Sure." Another sip. Paige's eyes flicked to her phone screen face down on the coffee table. "Well," Paige said, placing the glass down carefully, "if he's gone, maybe that's what he wanted. Space." "You're supposed to be on my side," she snapped. "I'm not on anyone's side." That stuck, echoed, bit. She didn't stay long. Something felt wrong. The vibe, the coolness, the way Paige didn't ask for details, didn't suggest drinks, didn't even offer a snide remark about his haircut or taste in socks. She left. That night, back home, she poured herself 2 fingers of gin, no tonic, just pride, and opened Instagram, swiped mindlessly until a photo made her hand freeze. Soft lighting, booth seating, a dimly lit restaurant she recognized. They used to celebrate anniversaries there. 2 glasses of wine, a candle flicker between them, and Paige, looking pretty, not glam, not styled, just soft, warm, seen. Across from her, only a sliver of an arm, a shoulder, a wristwatch she knew too well. No tags, no location, no caption, but unmistakable. She zoomed in until the pixels blurred, heart pounding. Checked the timestamp, last night. Right around the time she was crying on the bathroom floor, screaming silently into the edge of a towel, wondering what the hell just happened to her marriage. She opened messages, typed, "What the damn is this?" Pause, delete. Retyped, "Seriously? Are you out of your mind?" Sent. The reply came 6 minutes later. Short, clean, surgical. "You said it was open. You made it fair." She stared at it like it had been written in a language she never bothered to learn. No apology, no denial, no emoji, not even a sarcastic winky face, just a mirror, one she couldn't shatter. Because here's the truth that slapped her harder than any scandal could. She made the rules, he followed them, and someone else benefited. For the first time since the gala, her mind didn't race. It stalled. Her chest tightened, fingers trembling as she held the phone like it might start burning. Because Paige didn't just cross a line. Paige didn't believe there was a line anymore. And worst of all, neither did he. The knock came at 11:06 a.m. Not a buzz, not a ring. A knock, sharp, deliberate, like someone with authority and zero intention of waiting. She opened the door expecting another flower delivery from some PR firm or one of those insufferable "I support you queen" baskets from her influencer circle. Instead, it was a courier in a navy windbreaker holding a rectangular leather-bound binder. "Signature?" "For what?" He pointed to the label. "Property separation packet. Certified delivery." Her stomach dropped, but her hands moved on autopilot. She signed, initials tight and angry. The courier nodded once and vanished, as if rehearsed. She stood in the foyer, barefoot, binder in hand, like she'd just been handed a loaded gun with no safety. Took it to the kitchen, flipped it open, and everything stopped. Inside were tabbed sections. Real estate assets, vehicle titles, investment accounts, trust protections, prenuptial activation clause. On top of the first page, a yellow post-it scrawled in his handwriting, "For your freedom, not with love, not we need to talk." Just that. She flipped to the condo. It had been removed from marital assets. The transfer, already executed, signed, notarized, effective immediately. Her name wasn't on the deed anymore. The beach property, sold. Quietly, efficiently, the funds rerouted into an LLC she didn't recognize. His car, kept. Her car, leased, under the LLC name. Her use of it was listed as conditional. She reread that word 5 times like it might change. She wasn't even the primary account holder for the wine club anymore. But the real kick didn't land until she found the section labeled Prenuptial Execution Clause, Triggered Conditions. It was short. One sentence highlighted in pale red, per clause 14b, public declaration of infidelity by either party constitutes grounds for immediate execution of protective measures and asset separation. She froze, then flipped the page. Attached, a printed transcript from the gala's live stream. Her words verbatim. "We're in an open relationship now, right, honey?" Next line in bold, timestamp, 8:32 p.m. Audio and visual confirmation available via event footage, link attached. Her hands started shaking. She remembered the mic, the spotlight, the laughter. She had weaponized him for clout, for edge, for attention, and he'd turned it into legal ammunition. She scanned the rest. There was no bluff, no room for interpretation. Everything he'd built with her, everything she thought was at least half hers, had been carved away cleanly, without cruelty, surgically. It was the absence of emotion in the pages that undid her. No bitterness, no pettiness, just logistics. Logistics that bled her name out of everything that used to carry weight. The prenup wasn't supposed to matter. It had been drawn up for optics, back when they were newly in love and flush with idealism. But she hadn't read the fine print. She was too busy choosing fonts for the wedding invites. And he had. He'd read every line, and quietly updated it 2 years ago with a new clause she barely remembered signing. Now it was her rope, and she was halfway through the noose. She grabbed her phone, opened messages. "We need to talk." 3 dots. Then nothing. Then they vanished. She called, straight to voicemail. The rage came fast. Furniture was kicked, the binder thrown. A candle knocked off the counter and shattered like brittle pride. But then came something worse. Stillness. She looked around the condo, suddenly aware of how much was his, not just legally, visibly. The book collection, the jazz records, the decanter he insisted on polishing, even the throw blanket folded military neat across the couch. She felt like a squatter in her own life. The joke had always been, "If we ever split, I'm taking half." Turns out, the only thing she got was the punchline. The envelope was thick, expensive paper, real ink. It arrived 2 days after the binder, hand-delivered, not by courier this time, but slid through the brass mail slot like an invitation to salvation. Her first instinct was suspicion. Her second was hope. The return address was embossed, Wells and Carter Capital, a name she recognized immediately. Old money, real money. A firm her husband had once consulted for during a particularly lucrative partnership they never talked about in detail, only that it wasn't the right time for her to be involved. She sliced it open. Inside, a gold-trimmed card reading, "You are cordially invited to a private investor mixer, Thursday Vertical Bar, 7 p.m. Vertical Bar, the Fairhaven Club underneath." In smaller text, cocktails, introductions, announcements. There was no +1 line, just her name, or rather what she thought was her name, Miss Caroline Mercer, not Carter. Mercer, her maiden name, a name she hadn't used in over a decade, a name he used to correct people on, gently, whenever someone got it wrong. Now it was printed on fine cardstock like a label on a box that no longer belonged to him. Still, she saw it as an opening, a chance. Maybe this was his version of an olive branch, an invitation back into the orbit, the circles, the table. She spent 2 hours on hair and another one convincing herself it was an oversight. The maiden name, the silence, the disappearing act. Maybe it was part of the reset. He'd be there, of course. And when he saw her, dressed to reclaim her place, maybe the wall would crack. By 7:03 p.m., she was stepping into the vaulted marble lobby of the Fairhaven, heels echoing with purpose. The check-in desk was flanked by 2 staff members in matching charcoal suits, earpieces gleaming. "Name?" one asked, smiling politely. "Caroline Carter," she said instinctively, brushing a stray curl behind her ear. The woman scanned the list, then paused. "Ah, Mercer, yes, here it is." The smile faltered, just slightly. She slid a small envelope across the table. Inside, a name badge, Caroline Mercer +1, withdrawn. She stared at it. "What does this mean?" she asked. The woman blinked, professional but unmoved. "You were previously marked as a guest of Mr. Carter. That designation was updated earlier this week. You're now listed as an independent attendee." Her throat tightened. "Updated by him?" The woman just nodded. No sympathy, just logistics. She stepped into the main hall. Velvet chairs, crystal chandeliers, the sound of polite laughter and billion-dollar ambition. She scanned the crowd and spotted him within seconds. There he was, suited, crisp, confident, standing near the raised lounge with a glass of neat scotch in one hand, the other gesturing as he spoke to a group of men and women who looked like they owned small nations. His laugh, that quiet, low one she used to know, spilled out into the room effortlessly. He hadn't seen her yet. Or maybe he had. Hard to say. A man she didn't recognize approached her. Older, polished. A Wells and Carter name tag that might as well have said gatekeeper. "Ah, Miss Mercer," he said, offering a handshake that felt like a transaction. "Glad you could make it. Your husband spoke highly of you in the past." She bristled. "Ex-husband." He tilted his head. "Of course. Of course." She moved through the room like a satellite no longer tethered to the gravitational center. People glanced at her, polite but distant. No one approached. No one invited. The host hadn't introduced her. She wasn't on the inner circle. She wasn't even on the outer circle. She was an asterisk. She lingered by the bar for 20 minutes, swirling her drink, waiting for him to come over, to break away, to say something. But he didn't. Not a look, not a nod, not even a flinch. He was too busy shaking hands, laughing, reclaiming his space among people who never saw her as part of the equation in the first place. By 8:12 p.m., she had peeled the name tag off her dress and folded it into her clutch like it was radioactive. She left without saying goodbye. Back in her car, parked 2 blocks away to avoid valet shame, she sat in the driver's seat, hands frozen on the wheel, engine off. She had come expecting a door. Instead, she found a wall. And her name, her real name, was already etched on the outside. It was supposed to be a light brunch, the kind where people drink too much Prosecco by noon and pretend kale salads are fun, where backhanded compliments get dressed in Chanel and ambition wears sunglasses indoors. She hadn't wanted to go, not really, but someone had posted that he might be there. That's all it took. He wasn't. But a different ghost of their past was. Jenna Marcus, PR strategist, social climber, an occasional bridge friend between Caroline's old world and the new circles she was clawing to re-enter. "Oh my God, you look so rested," Jenna said, which in brunch speak meant, "You've been publicly humiliated and I'm fishing for gossip." Caroline smiled tight. "Thanks. You too." Halfway through an overpriced beet tartine, Jenna leaned in conspiratorially, brushing a crumb from her lip like it was foreplay for a secret. "Did you hear about the Langford funding round?" she whispered, like it was forbidden knowledge. Caroline frowned. "Langford Labs?" Jenna's eyes sparkled. "No, Langford Venture Studio, brand new, very hush-hush until this morning. He," and of course she meant him, "locked in the anchor investors 2 weeks ago. Huge names. It's going to be massive." Caroline blinked. "Wait, Langford? As in the project we," Jenna cut in, still smiling. "Oh, I know. That's what I thought too. I remember when you two were workshopping that concept at your lake house. You called it Beacon, right? I thought that was such a clean name." Beacon. The project they stayed up late sketching on cocktail napkins. Her idea, his architecture, her branding, his execution. A dream they shelved when life, and later ego, got in the way. Caroline reached for her mimosa, drank like it might drown the sudden sting rising in her chest. "So, he revived it?" she asked, voice thinner than she meant. Jenna tilted her head, fork still in midair. "Well, not exactly. It's different. New name, new pitch. Same bones, though. You'd recognize it instantly. Lean tech incubation with long horizon capital partners. And God, he looks so in his element, like Beacon was always meant to happen, just without the noise. Without me," she thought. She forced a laugh. "Wow, well, good for him." Jenna beamed, unaware she was twisting the knife. "And the partners love him. I heard he's already booked a speaking slot at the mid-year funder summit. Apparently the way he framed it, it's all about rebirth. Phoenix metaphors, personal betrayal, that whole arc, very buzzy." Caroline's teeth clenched so hard her jaw ached. She pulled out her phone under the table, searched Langford Venture Studio. The site was bare bones but clean, modern logo, a muted palette, no team page yet, but a contact address she instantly recognized, one he used back when he freelanced from a WeWork in Brooklyn. She clicked About, nothing, no credits, no mention of Beacon, no timeline, no co-founders, just a new beginning built on lessons from silence and experience. She checked domain registration, private. She checked LinkedIn, his name listed as founder and managing partner, no co. Her inbox, empty. Her name, nowhere. It wasn't just that he rebuilt the dream, he erased her from it. She pushed her plate away, no longer hungry, and excused herself from the table. In the mirror of the bathroom, she saw it for the first time, the look she used to see in other women, the ones she pitied, the ones left behind when someone else leveled up. It wasn't rage, it was irrelevance. the kind of bitter, swallowing realization that she wasn't just excluded, she was unnecessary. He hadn't just closed the door, he built a new house and didn't even keep her name on the mailbox. She lit every candle in the house, pulled out the linen napkins they'd received as a wedding gift and never used, polished the wine glasses herself, even though the cleaner would have done it. The table was set for 12, but only 8 confirmed. By the time the night arrived, 4 had dropped out. Last-minute conflict, kids' fever, flight delay. She knew they weren't sick, or busy, or out of town. They were opting out, but she wasn't ready to admit that yet. The menu was overthought and overpriced. Imported burrata, scallops seared in citrus butter, a risotto she practiced 3 times the week before. She even opened the vintage Pinot he'd been saving for a special occasion, one she assumed would always include her. The doorbell rang at 7:06. Jenna arrived first, looking apologetic but curious, the same way people look when attending a wake of someone they didn't really like. "You look amazing," she said, then added, "How are you holding up?" Caroline smiled. "Tight. I'm hosting a dinner party, not fighting in a war." Over the next half hour, the remaining guests trickled in. 2 couples, 1 solo friend who clearly thought they'd be networking and found themselves in a socio-political minefield instead. Conversations started brittle. Safe topics, vacations, skincare, which schools were collapsing under enrollment scandals. But no one asked how she was. No one mentioned him. She brought out the food like she was performing, witty as ever, dressed the part, poured generously, tried to float, to shimmer, to command the room like she used to. But the room didn't respond. Eyes drifted. Responses came slower. Laughter felt polite. She watched people take sips after each bite, as if washing down guilt. By the time dessert, lavender creme brulee, hit the table, one of the couples had already realized the sitter had to leave early. Another left with the vague excuse of an early flight that no one actually confirmed. Jenna lingered, mostly out of habit. Caroline followed her to the door, hoping for some post-mortem flattery, something like, "You were radiant tonight," or "They'll come around." But Jenna didn't offer that. Instead, she paused at the threshold, looked at Caroline with that uncomfortable sympathy that's worse than criticism. "You know," she said gently, "he never embarrassed you, not once, not in public, not in private, not even now." Caroline blinked. Jenna shrugged. "But you made him a punchline. People remember that." And then she left. No hug, no invitation to follow up, just the sound of expensive heels fading down the driveway. Back inside, the candles flickered like they were embarrassed to still be lit. She stood alone in a room that still smelled of citrus and burnt sugar, watching the table of untouched desserts melt into themselves. Her phone buzzed, someone liking a 3-day-old post of hers, probably out of algorithmic pity. She didn't cry. Crying would have been a release. This wasn't sadness, it was erosion, slow, relentless. What she felt was something colder. She had tried to host her way back into relevance, to make hospitality look like strength, to pretend the rumors hadn't infected the air. But the silence at that table had been louder than any scandal. Not one person asked about the prenup. Not one person mentioned the binder. They didn't need to. They had all drawn their own conclusions and quietly rearranged their alliances. And in those new arrangements, she was a cautionary tale. Not tragic, just excluded. She almost didn't go. The invitation arrived through a former colleague who insisted, "You'll want to be seen there. Everyone will be." It was a mid-tier innovation summit dressed up like a TED knockoff. Startups, venture funds, legacy media trying to stay relevant. She hadn't RSVP'd at first, but then she saw the headliner, Thomas Carter, keynote, Rebuilding Forward, Leadership Through Collapse. Just seeing his name made her throat tighten. She Googled the event, sold out, waitlist only. VIP section already roped off weeks in advance. Still, she made one call, then another, pulled a favor. That was her skill after all, knowing who owed what and when. By 6:58 p.m., she was in the 3rd row, middle seat, just close enough to make eye contact if it happened, just far enough to not make a scene. He walked on stage precisely at 7 o'clock. No music, no flash, just him. Slim-fit charcoal suit, no tie. The same easy confidence he used to wear around her neck like an accessory, something she mistook for predictability. Now it looked sharper, controlled. Even the way he held the mic felt surgical. She braced herself for impact. But he didn't start with names, or jabs, or anything that pointed directly at her. He opened with a story, about silence, not revenge, not retaliation. But what happens when someone chooses stillness over spectacle? How walking away is sometimes louder than confrontation. How betrayal doesn't have to be scandalous to be catastrophic. It can wear lipstick and smile while it guts you. She froze in her chair. He still hadn't said her name. He didn't need to. He spoke about rebuilding. People think collapse is dramatic, he said, pacing slowly across the stage. They imagine explosions, scandal, rage, but most collapse is quiet, subtle. It happens when the foundation's been eroded by 1,000 small lies dressed as humor or cruelty wrapped in charm. The audience was dead silent. He continued, calm and clear. I want to thank the people who mistook cruelty for wit, who clapped when the punchline was aimed at someone they claimed to love. They taught me everything I needed to know about rebuilding without them. Someone in the audience gasped quietly. Others nodded, murmured agreement. Her palms were sweating. Her face was flushed. He didn't mention the gala, didn't quote her line, didn't replay the moment she made him a laugh track at his own expense. But the weight of those unspoken things pressed down harder than if he'd screamed. It was elegant, brutal, not in its words, but in its restraint. He ended with a quote from someone else, an author she used to mock for being overly self-serious. The people who throw stones rarely expect you to build something out of them. The crowd erupted. He smiled, just barely, a nod, the kind of nod that said, I'm finished here. As he walked off stage, a standing ovation followed. She stayed seated, because standing would have exposed the way her knees were shaking, the way her vision had narrowed, the way her mouth had gone dry like she'd swallowed ashes. People around her whispered. Someone 2 seats down muttered, I think that was about his ex. Another added, I heard she made some joke at an event, totally blew up their marriage. She stared straight ahead, frozen, paralyzed by a realization worse than guilt. He didn't bury her. She'd done that herself, and all he'd done was pour a little light on the grave. She waited by the valet stand like she belonged there, arms crossed, perfect posture, lipstick reapplied 3 times in the restroom upstairs, each pass thinner than the last. Her heels ached. Her dress, a deep wine satin, creased where she'd been gripping the fabric in her fists while sitting alone at the bar for 40 minutes. The doorman had asked twice if she needed anything. She said no both times. But the truth was, she didn't know what she needed, only that he'd show up. And when he did, he wasn't flanked by a new lover, no entourage, no champagne in hand, no look at me now energy, just him, clean, centered, and completely unreachable. He handed his valet ticket to the attendant before he even saw her. Then he did. He looked at her like he was seeing a painting he once loved but hadn't thought about in years, not with anger, not with regret, just recognition, and a hint of removal, as if he was still willing to name the piece, but wouldn't hang it on his wall again. She stepped forward, her voice steadier than she felt. Was it ever real? He didn't scoff, didn't pause to frame a dramatic answer. Of course it was, he said, eyes never leaving hers, until you put it up for auction. That stung, not because it was cruel, but because it wasn't. It was true. She took a breath, tried to force vulnerability into a space where control had always lived. I didn't think you'd actually walk away. His head tilted slightly, a smirk that never made it past his cheekbones. I didn't walk, he said, handing his valet stub to the kid in the red blazer. I left the door you opened. She blinked, once, twice, and then the car pulled up. Not his old sedan, not the one with her coffee stains in the console or the emergency blanket she insisted on keeping in the trunk. A new one, no familiar marks, no shared history. He stepped in, didn't close the door dramatically, didn't roll down the window for a final line. He just disappeared into the leather and glass like someone driving off from a house that burned down weeks ago. And she stood there, her shoes hurting and her silence louder than the engine. No one clapped. No one gasped. No one screamed, because there was no one left to perform for. Just a woman in a designer dress, staring down an empty valet lane, finally realizing he didn't leave to punish her. He left because she gave him permission, and he simply took it.